Have you been interested in getting into Euronymphing or maybe improving your current skills Euronymphing? Would you like to find out how to rig a leader in the exact leader that took home the gold at the World Championship this year? You're in luck because we have Pete Erickson back on the show to break down the rig and to shed light on a new Euronymphing clinic happening this year. This is the Wet Fly Swing podcast where we show you the best places to travel to for fly fishing, how to find the best resources and tools to prepare for this big adventure, and how you can give back to the fish species we love.
Welcome to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show, where you discover tips, tricks, and tools from the leading names in fly fishing today.
Hey, I'm Dave, host of the Wet Fly Swing podcast. I've been fly fishing most of my life. I grew up around a fly shop, and I have created one of the largest fly fishing podcasts in this country. I've also interviewed more of the greatest fly fishing anglers than just about anyone in the world. Today, Pete is going to share the three main types of Euronymphing leaders and the one he used to take home the gold medal this year. You'll find out when you might need a micro leader and some tips on casting it. Plus, we just launched a huge giveaway to win a trip to the Euro Clinic with Pete on the Wood River. You can head over right now to wetflyswing.com/giveaway to enter for a chance to win that and all the gear, the huge gear package. And if you want to jump into the Euro Clinic, that's wetflyswing.com/Euro Clinic right now, and you can learn more and save a spot. These links will also be in the show notes. This is a biggie with Pete today, so let's jump in and get started right now. How you doing, Pete?
Hey, good, Dave. Good to be on.
Yeah. Thanks for putting some time together today to do this. We've got a lot going on right now because as we speak, we just launched the Euro Clinic giveaway and all the gear giveaway that's going on. So we'll have a link in the show notes so people can enter that right now. But you're off a couple things. Last year, you won the gold. We're going to talk about that with Team USA. We're going to talk about a little bit on some leaders. We have this webinar going. So I think we have some good stuff going for people here today, but maybe just give us an update on, let's go right to the event that you had, the Team USA. Maybe talk about that. Can you describe that in a nutshell, what went on there?
Yeah, we had the Masters World Championships, Masters, and actually I think it was the second Ladies World Fly Fishing Championship. They were kind of together at the same site, so it was really cool. And Kamloops, British Columbia, is a place that I fished as a kid a lot, so it was really great to get to go back up there. That was in September like 20th, around there. We were up there for a few weeks, and our team overall, just in a nutshell, we missed winning the team gold by basically about a centimeter of a fish. If any fish had been rounded up in a couple different deals on the final day, we would have got there. So we lost by 1 point to Spain, which is they're a really powerful, awesome team.
Yeah.
But on the good news note, I was able to win the individual world championship in points. So, and that was first time I've ever done that. So it was kind of cool. And it was a little surreal. I've been doing these competitions for a long time and, been really close to, in podium position the night before the final session a few times. And you know how that works. You just have a tough section or just other guys move ahead of you or whatever it is. So, and you just don't make it. But finally, everything kind of came together. It was really great.
Wow. So you described that. I mean, how did that feel? You're up on the podium and all that. Was it so surreal? It's just
yeah. You're not really ready for when you get to hear the national anthem and all that stuff. It's kind of cool. There's a whole bunch of people that are clapping and stuff. It was a cool feeling when I was out on the river on the final section. It was a Clearwater River up there, and it was a tough river. Like pretty much, there were salmon in the river, so the trout fishing was really tough, and most of the sections weren't giving up a single trout all day long. So
wow.
And after I found some fish behind a few rocks, and I got one right away. Within 10 minutes, I was like, oh wow, this is great. And then I got a second one, and then I ended up getting 6 in the first hour. And I kind of knew at that point, like, I've got a pretty good chance of holding my position because I was number one going into that day. And so, yeah, it was a weird feeling, like, oh wow, this is something I've been working towards for a long time, and it finally happened in the Masters division. So it was pretty awesome.
Amazing. That's it. And then And so you had that. So what else has been going on? Maybe since, I can't remember the last time we had you on the podcast, but it's been a little bit, what's been new. I guess that was it. And now, really we had our Euro school. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. We had that last year on the Henry's Fork.
Yeah. You and I, yep. That, and I've been working with Echo on some new rod designs. And so we're working on those right now. And I'm a ninth grade English teacher, so that's always busy.
Yep.
So yeah, let's talk about that. The school, it was fun. We had great weather and a lot of good fishing.
It was a great trip going out there. For me, it was my first time fishing, the Henry's Fork, and that was just a great trip. I think, what we heard from people was, that they wanted even more of Pete, right? They wanted more of you, because it was like a mix. It was a school. We had a little bit of guided, and then we had some school, but I think people definitely wanted more. So this year, what we're thinking about doing, what we are doing right now, we're giving this away as we speak, is more of a clinic. So instead of, like a bunch of guides out there on a guided trip, they're going to have you for a full day. Well, actually, it's going to be 2 days. So we want to talk about that maybe a little bit on the clinic and what people can expect there, because somebody's going to win that with gear and things like that. So let's start there. Do you want to kind of talk about what you feel like makes a successful clinic?
Yeah, obviously being able to work one-on-one with people is great, because everybody's got, different questions and different things that they want to work on. The area that we're going to be doing is still Idaho, which, Idaho offers a lot of fantastic Euro Nymphing rivers. This would be the Wood River in Sun Valley, and that's another place that I guide. So, I think that the access is great. As far as wading, it's pretty easy wading around there, and a lot of the water type is perfect for any level of European nymphing that you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're gonna. I think in the big difference, one of the big differences, not only they're going to get more Pete time on this, but we're not going to be an all-inclusive. I think on the school, typically the schools we had, everything, food, everything covered, which, last year you even did the food, which was amazing, but it was a lot of work, So this year it's going to be basically,
there's just not time for that.
No, there wasn't time for that. So this year it's going to be basically just get in on the clinic. You pay for your spot for the clinic, and you get 2 days of basically you. And we're probably going to have some other folks there that are going to be helping as well. But what does that look like? Let's talk day one. If somebody was going to be coming into this clinic on the Wood, what can they expect for that first day? And I think it's probably going to be somewhere probably in the range of 10 people or less that are going to be doing this.
Right. We'll probably go over some of the history of the Euro nymphing and what my experience is on it, and then we'll talk about gear and I think you and I are going to talk about leaders even a little bit right now.
Yep.
Just for guys that want to kind of get ahead of the game, that want to do this. But equipment is always a big thing, and so we'll probably get into that, and then kind of get out and kind of assess where guys are early on in that first day. And, do some general overview, and then get into it, probably after lunch.
Yeah. Okay.
Get into a lot of demos from me and just kind of on river experience.
Perfect. Yeah, that sounds awesome. So the first kind of part of the day will be, and we'll probably be on the water doing kind of that first session. And then kind of after lunch, we'll actually go even deeper into what you talked about. Is that kind of how it'll work?
Yeah, just so we can get everyone's input on what they want individually.
Perfect. Individually. Yeah. And then for day two, do you think day two will be more of the same of that, where we'll go kind of maybe pick out some specific topics people want to go into, or how would a day two of the clinic look?
Yeah. So basically what we would do is to have everyone, okay, for tomorrow, what would you specifically like to work on? We can ask guys to go re-rig their stuff, and so that they're ready to go, or go to different sections and really apply it. Sometimes just getting a little bit of time, like an evening, to process what you really want and what you want to work on is good, because then the next day you can kind of do your thing. And then obviously the second part of the second day, we can kind of cut people loose to go kind of, do some discovery learning on their own, and go and then revisit them and say, what have you found, and what do you need help with? And so that, the benefit is truly just being able to walk around to each person and spend time with them. Yeah. And a lot of times it's somebody that's like, hey, the main thing I want out of this is my my casting Euro liters is just not accurate, and if you get that one thing taken care of in a 2-day deal, or get put on the right path, that could be really helpful. Or it could be a approach to different waters, or, my casting seems okay, but I'm not really sure about how to present my flies at depth, things like that.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have someone watch you do your cast or your approach or your presentation. And that's really why clinics are pretty great. And let's face it, it's beautiful Idaho fishing on the Wood River.
Right.
In a great place, Sun Valley.
Yeah, in Sun Valley, exactly. So that's the other cool thing, is that I think it's going to make it better and easier all around, is that we will be able to focus more time with people that are attending it. And I will say, people can go out right now to wetflyswing.com/Euro Clinic if they want to sign up and actually get a spot. We will also have a link in the show notes. But like we said, we're doing a giveaway. The big giveaway is going on this week for one winner, so that person will be there as well. But yeah, so we have the wood. So we're gonna have a couple of days, and there'll probably be, for dinner. I'm not sure people are going to get their own place to stay, figure out food, but there'll be some folks that get together for a beverage maybe in the evening or something like that. But I think it's really going to be on the water, having you, like you said, kind of review how people are doing, what do they want to accomplish, what are their goals, sort of thing. And how would this be versus a guide trip, right? You've got a guide trip and then you have this. What do you see as the benefits of the clinic over, say, a guide trip?
A guide trip is going to be focused on catching fish, and this one, catching fish will be great, obviously, but this will be a little more instructional, where you can kind of say, hey, let's pull back from this hole right here and let's work on your cast for a second, or, instructional, educational. A lot of times once you have that perspective, it kind of takes some of your pressure off you. Now, that being said, this is an awesome Western River, and if you see some fish rising over in the corner, you're more than welcome to put a dry fly on and have that great experience, because you're there. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
But overall, it's got an instructional angle to it. Through the years, I've had days where someone said, "Can I hire you as a just for instruction?" And a lot of times I feel like the pressure is taken off of them. They're like, okay, I don't have to necessarily catch this many fish or whatever it is. Right. I can just focus on learning, and just, maybe there are some fish out there that I can see working, but I don't care about that right now. I want to talk about my leader right now. Let's step back from those fish and let's take a look at my leader, and why does it feel like it's hinging, or what have I done wrong with this? And then we could actually take the time to do that, because, I'm a process person, and I really enjoy the process of improving and learning things. And, sometimes the catching a fish is more of a fixed mindset,
Yeah, it is. It is. I know. No, this is great. I think this is going to be awesome. And like we said, it's going to be 2 days on the Wood River, which is a famous river. I've been hearing about that one for a long time. And then it'll be cool with a group of people. Everybody obviously is going to be learning from each other as well out there. And so we'll be getting into that more as we go. And you mentioned leaders. I guess two things I want to mention. The webinar. So we actually have a webinar series that we've been working on. So everybody that gets the clinic actually gets free access to this course. So the webinar is going to become a Euronymphing course, which people will have access to. So that's another bonus of the clinic. So they will be able to kind of watch the videos and things. But let's talk leaders, because part of that, you mentioned it, leaders is a big thing. We've got this live webinar that we did on leaders. So if you had to say, where do you start with leaders? If somebody's asking you, what are the few leaders you need to be thinking about? What do you tell them?
Well, a lot of times they will ask about lines, which we can cover in a very short amount of time, because a lot of the European nymphing lines from the manufacturers are similar. That'll be an easy one to kind of say, hey, this is the construction of them, this is what they do. Leaders gets a little bit more complicated. Usually how it breaks down is, if you're new to European nymphing, you want a certain leader that affords you the ability to be a little more accurate and to throw flies, that are that, like, you basically just have less tangles and your accuracy is better. And then you work up toward kind of a intermediate leader. And then I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard of micro leaders, which is the more advanced. Like I said, you probably don't. Of course, you can just grab a rod with a micro leader on it and start throwing it and go, oh, I see that I need a a certain skill level for this.
Right.
Okay, give me the other leader. So that's kind of one of the things that it breaks down into.
Gotcha.
And also there, you can have a preference on these leaders too. Like you can be very, very effective fishing some of what we call the heavier leaders, or the leaders that turn over a little easier. And that could be your jam, basically. Like, hey, I am a very effective European nympher with this rig. I feel comfortable with it.
Yeah.
You don't have to push yourself and say, hey, what is the top Spain guy using right now?
Yeah.
And like, because a lot of that deals with the specific waters that they fish, so it's not just beginner, intermediate, advanced. Sometimes, an intermediate leader is the best leader for a certain type of water in North America or whatever it is. So I would say that that's kind of how the leaders break down. And we have, I can show everyone all the builds of the leaders. We can even, like you said, we probably will stop for, we'll all get together for dinner and, have a few refreshments and then we can, I have lots of printed off charts and stuff like that. I even have great options to help people with, like if they don't like tying stuff, maybe their eyes are bad or whatever, store-bought leaders, or just really, really easy ones,
Gotcha.
to tie. So a lot of options with the leaders as far as that goes.
Yeah. And what did you use? Let's just start with what you use in Canada for when you won. Did you use the same leader the whole week?
I did. So after I just talked about how you don't necessarily have to use a micro leader, that's pretty much all I use.
Yeah.
There are certain situations with certain flies that I'll actually use a leader that is it's a little heavier than a micro leader and it turns flies over. So even in a world's championship, I would go back to some of what some people would call a more intermediate leader, just because of the flies that I need to turn over. But in general, up on the Smokeamine and the Clearwater rivers, I used what I call my stealth comp micro leader, and it's basically 8 to 10 feet of 8-pound mono, then down to 6-pound mono for 3 feet. Ciders now I kind of move around depending on my situation. A lot of times I'll build in the indicator mono, or use a pen, or use wax. Tippet ring. We'll talk about tippet rings and how useful they are. And we'll have all this stuff at the clinic. We'll have everything for everybody. And also I can put out a list before that for the group. Like, hey, here's what'll be very useful for you to get and bring and just have in your, in your vest or your gear bag. And then believe it or not, all the way depending on the depth of the water, you're going another 5-6 feet of up between 5X and 8X.
From the tippet ring.
Yeah. And in British Columbia, we were only allowed to use one fly. So, and there are certain countries that, it's one fly, which kind of dispels that myth that it's like, oh, these guys are all throwing 4 flies and it's, they're basically, there are 2 flies is usually normal. Yeah. And there are a lot of competitions where it's 1 fly. The leader lengths, this is intimidating for people, but a lot of times the leader lengths are, between 18 and 22 feet. That's based on Phipps Moosh rules. You can shorten those leaders to make it easier. That's another thing that I'll show everyone, is that the options, you don't have to follow like the competition rules options. There are advantages to skipping out on those rules sometimes, and it makes things easier especially with leaders. The reason that we go 18 to 22 is because the rule is that it has to be, your leader can't be longer than twice the rod length.
Right.
So, and our rods go up to 11 feet.
Togiak River Lodge is the Alaskan adventure every fly fisherman dreams of. The lodge specializes in remote and exclusive fishing trips for all 5 species of salmon, plus rainbows, dolly varden, and much more. Togiak is the only lodge with access to 30-plus miles of river, the best guides, the best boats, and lots of fish with little pressure. I'll be heading up there this summer, so check in with Jordan and the crew right now to find out what they have available. You can head over to wetflyswing.com/Togiak to learn more right now. That's Togiak, Togiak, to discover that wilderness experience you've been looking for. So in Canada, would you have used a longer than a 22-foot leader if you could have? Would there be any advantage of doing that?
That's a really good question. Yeah, there could have been an advantage to that. Yeah.
What would be the advantage? Because I think when I think of this, I think like, okay, 20 feet or even 15 feet is long enough that all that leader is going to be out. Some of it's going to be out of the water. Why would like a 30-foot leader just be better than, say, the 20-foot?
So like on the Clearwater River, which was a big, fast-moving river with salmon in it, you can get a skill level to where you can shoot a lot more than 20 feet. And you can remember if the rod's 11 feet, you can raise that rod up. You can manipulate that leader. And there might be depth issues that the river's 6-7 feet deep in some places. So yeah, there are advantages to going longer. A lot of times your line is all the way up to the tip, or even out. Like there were lots of times where I had my line completely out, and but my fly line, and if that fly line was 5x tippet, then it wouldn't sag as much.
Right. No sag.
And so the sagging is a lot of times why people would have their, basically the line that's going through their guides would not be a line that might sag, because fly line's heavier than tippet. So that would be one of the reasons. But you're right. In most situations, like on the Smokamine, which is a smaller river, I wasn't using all of my 18-foot leader. I was using 15 of it, depending on my approach. Sometimes you're even super close. But these are that's the cool thing. These are like application discussions that are kind of fun, where you can kind of, like I said, a lot of people who are just finding their way in European nymphing, they'll use smaller leaders and still have a great time and progress at a really nice rate.
Gotcha. No, that's perfect. So, and that makes sense. So, a big river, you can just cover more water if you have a longer leader. So, if it's just like, the analogy, or not even the analogy, but you think a spin rod, right? If you got a spin rod, it's all mono. You can cast as far as you want and cover the water easily, right? That's the, not that the Euro is copying the spin rod, but is there a similar thing there? Is that what you're talking about?
In a way, obviously a spin, you have less drag. That's and drag messes with your presentation. So that's why a lot of these leaders are so long, is to eliminate that. So it helps your presentation. But yeah, with the flies and the rods and everything, yeah, it's definitely a different thing than throwing kind of whipping a heavy Rapala out there or something like that. You know what I'm saying? It's like you're in touch with your flies. It's visual because you're watching. Yeah, you're watching a sighter, so it's totally visual. Yeah, and your rod tip's up there. You've got it still has a delicate fly fishing feeling to everything. It's not. I would say it's different, but it does take advantage of those kind of presentation advantages of having super light lines.
Yeah, super light. No, this is great. And I want to take a tangent here because you mentioned obviously the Shadow X, the Echo is the rod that you developed with, and Tim Rajeff, we had him on the podcast a while back, and we were talking about the conversation of just fly fishing, and how some people talk about Euro, how, are you casting, what makes fly fishing because the lines are different. What's your take on that when somebody says, hey, is Euro nymphing really fly fishing because are you really casting a fly line? How do you respond to that?
Oh yeah, of course. It's my boss that was talking to me about that as we're designing rods.
Yeah, sure. And he actually brought it. We'll put a link to the show notes to that episode.
No, I knew that he would bring that up. Yeah, we talked about it a lot. He's a world champion fly caster, so he's very endeared toward throwing fly lines, right? And so we talked a lot about it, and it's one of those discussions where I think fly fishing pushes kind of the limits of what we think of traditional fly fishing. So someone out there with a, weight forward or double taper line that's just casting one, parachute atoms, that would be kind of the traditional thing. But I don't know. It's funny because I was like, well, Tim, have you ever, gone sailfish, fly fishing for sailfish? Right. Like, well, yeah. And I'm like, you throw a giant sock out there,
right.
I'm like that's the farthest thing from throwing a little tiny dry fly on a spring creek.
Right.
I've been a guide on the Snake River, South Fork of the Snake. Streamer fishing for us is like, some of the streamers are massive, and it's like, that's pretty far from casting traditional, little dry flies and stuff like that. That's just basically almost spin fishing. because you're pounding banks and making 3 or 4 strips and then right back up with this monster fly and pounding banks.
Yeah.
And that a lot of that's basically not like throwing a loop. You're just
Yeah.
zinging this massive fly. So I don't know, like the traditionalist thing gets pushed in a lot of different areas.
It does.
The thing that I always tell people is, for me, the fact that you're using flies, your hand is on a fly line and you're manipulating it with a figure of 8. My fly line I use my fly line a lot actually to reach different areas. The rod itself is, the furthest thing from a spin rod.
Oh, right.
Real, I'm building leaders with, tippets. Like there's a lot of fly fishing elements in that. So that's usually what I would tell him is that you can't do this thing without fly fishing gear. No. And so he'd be like, all right.
Yeah. Well, I think, and it goes back to the old, whether it's Gary Borger or whoever, back when nymph fishing was like, oh my God, these people were like saying, that's not fly fishing. You can't throw a nymph.
Oh, yeah.
Thing, right?
No,
that back in the day.
The chalk streams in England, they still don't allow nymph fishing, So it's like,
right.
So anybody who's nymph fishing right now had that same deal. Like, this isn't fly fishing. You're going subsurface. This is not fly fishing.
Yeah.
So I guess it's all kind of, in the eye of the beholder as far as what they want to do with the gear itself. So
I agree. I think it's great. And I think that, and a lot of our listeners here are fish conventionally too. So it's not like they're just fly anglers. There's a lot of diversity. So I think, and anybody that I think is an angler will say the same thing. True angler will say, hey, you know what, just go have fun. Like explore, kind of find your own thing. And so it's great. But I'm glad you went down that road because Rajeff, of course, we're going to have him back on soon. And I'm going to pick his brain again. But yeah, it's great.
Yeah, you could. Just be good to the resource is the way I look at it. It doesn't really matter what type of gear you're using out there on the rivers. Just, be thoughtful of the resource.
Perfect. And so let's go back to the leaders. So you mentioned the one. So the one you use most of the time in Canada to take the gold home was the micro. And it was like 8 to 10 feet of, what was the first 8 pound?
Mono.
And then mono, and then 3 feet of 6 pound mono. And then you have like a Tippett ring, and then that goes down to whatever your X is.
I usually have a cider in there somewhere. So it depends. Or I would, if I don't have a colored cider and I just keep going with mono to the Tippett ring, I'll use pet markers, and then the Tippett ring, and then you do have to kind of make your bottom section of fluoro. It should match the water depth.
Oh, okay. So the bottom is fluoro.
Yeah, I use fluoro. Yep, and 1.5 times the depth is usually something you can do. Now you can change that length based on currents and things like that. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, that's pretty much the one and when you're in a competition, a lot of times you want to, fish a similar rod. Like I used my 10.5 foot 3X Shadow X, 10.5 foot 3, and most of the guys use that, or a 10 foot 3. I did use the 11 a little bit on the big river. Actually, I used the 11 for for a good portion of the section, the 11 footer. But you get used to using one of them because for handling the certain fish in the area, you get comfortable, and you get comfortable with a leader and certain, size beads on the flies and stuff like that. So
okay,
that's what I used pretty much. And I used that in Italy too. And a lot of our team uses similar leaders.
Okay.
So, some people may have slight variations.
Gotcha. So if you had a leader that was or a depth of water was 4 feet deep, you would want to have at least a 4 foot of that, whatever from your Tippett rig down would be 4 feet, if not maybe 6 feet. Is that how it looks?
Yeah, probably 6 feet. Yeah.
Yeah, 6 feet. And then how do you determine what X, on your Tippett to use? Oh,
that's a good question. Obviously if you can get away with using a heavier X, you're going to have less breakoffs, less tangles.
Yeah. What was the heaviest you used in the Canada? What was the heaviest you used?
I probably used heaviest was 7X because I'm used to working from 7.5 to 8.
Oh wow! So 7X is you. Yeah, it's awesome. So you're pretty light. Yeah, 5X would be not a normal Tippett.
That's where I start usually. But let's see, on the Smilkameen River, the fish were pretty friendly, and so the presentation was easy to get them if you could find where they were and dialed up the right drift and the right fly. So I think I actually did go 6X on the smoke mean because I'd realized that they didn't need to go down. But in, like, let's say in Italy, I know that there was a massive difference between 7 and 7.5, if you can believe that. Same with Czech Republic. Just these last couple competitions I've done. So, like, literally, our guide David in Czech Republic was like, "Did you go 7.5?" And I was like, "No, I went 7." And he goes, "That was your problem." And I was like, "Wow, really? These fish?" He's like, "Yeah, they can tell the difference between those," which sounds silly, but then you go out there and you actually switch to 7.5X, and all of a sudden, wow, like, you're right. Yeah, and it's not necessarily because they can see the flora or whatever. It's just the presentation of it.
Yeah, the presentation.
And it's just, I mean, Europe has a lot of fishing pressure on those rivers and really good anglers. And
yeah. So is the Wood River that we're going to be on for this clinic, is it going to be like that, kind of highly pressured, where we're going to have to really get fine?
Not necessarily. No, that's one of the nice things about North America is you can probably get away with 5.5X, and so you're going to deal with less tangles, and our fish are bigger too. So a lot of times, just to pay attention to fighting fish and getting them to the net quickly, you do want to go down to 5X, or even some, like on the Snake River, I fished 4.5, for Euro Nymphing, because you're going to run into some larger fish, and if you're fishing 8X, you have to play them longer to get them in.
Yeah.
And so you don't necessarily, or 7X, you don't necessarily want to do that. The fish are smaller in Europe, and you can bring them in, fairly quick with 7.5X. And that's another thing that is, there are advantages to, using leaders like this and the approach. You're hooking fish very close to you compared to traditional, casting way out there with a dry dropper or dry fly. So even if you're using, let's say you're using 5X with a dry fly and you cast way across the Henry's Fork, or 5.5X, or you've got to fight that fish all the way back to your net. With European nymphing, a lot of times the fish is very close, and you're gonna like get it into the net green. It's still fighting and has been netted quickly, and it's back in the river very quickly.
Right.
So in a way, it's better on the fish to catch them closer and get them in. So no, I would say in the Rocky Mountain West, I use a lot of 5X, 5.5X.
That's a great point.
Yeah, which sounds light, but how strong the tippets are these days.
Yeah, so 5X is good.
Yeah, they're insanely strong. And so once again, it would just be so that would cover a lot of the larger fish. The Wood River's got kind of like medium-sized fish, which is great. They're awesome.
What are the species?
It's rainbows. There's some browns.
All
in
rainbows?
There now.
Okay.
No, they're in the last few years there have been more browns in there, but it's mostly you're going to catch rainbows.
Cool. I want to follow up with a couple more leader examples here, but on the wood, since we're talking about this, maybe describe the wood. What makes it? Why is it a name that maybe some people have heard about around the country? What makes it so kind of special?
Well, I mean, Ernest Hemingway, Wood River, his house on the Wood River, that type of thing. It's it's a famous river in that it has a big history, and it's one of the staples. Silver Creek and the Wood River, one of the staples of fly fishing in Sun Valley area. So it's, like I said, it's storied, and it also, like, you can fish it in the winter. I know people that went up last weekend to fish the Wood. The winter fishing window is short, like during the day, but it's pretty fun. Like, that's another thing is you'll be able to go there anytime. Like, some people like to do a ski and then a ski vacation, and then they also head out to the Wood for a couple hours in the middle of the day.
Oh, perfect. So right now, as we're speaking, it's kind of January that you can go fish the Wood. You might be able to fish it today.
Yeah. No, you could fish it today for sure.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. I know Brett Bishop and I go up there in the winter, and sometimes you have to like go crush the ice around the corners of it to get in. And then once you're in the river, it's flowing, obviously. And you go find a great hole and or a couple and catch a lot of fish. It's a pretty fun deal. The other thing too is it's a very accessible river, and it rolls through town. It's beautiful, freestone, and it just has a lot of fish in it too. So that's another thing that people really like. And a lot of times the fish are very friendly. They're
cool.
very willing.
And freestone, maybe this I guess maybe just quickly, types of rivers: freestone, tailwater. What are the types of rivers, just big picture, that people, around the country, the world, that are out there?
Oh, yeah. Like, so if you have a tailwater, that's a big giant reservoir up above it. And that oftentimes the fishing's good below those because the water temperature is consistent.
Yeah.
And so the fish grow big. The wood doesn't have a dam. So
Okay.
it's a free river, and a lot of those tend to be like out west. They're freestones, meaning that when you walk into the river, you're basically walking on a lot of small stones. The wood has medium sized stones, like rocks that you can sit on, and it's very basically it's full of stones when you walk in almost every part. There are parts that have a little bit of silt and stuff, but now when you go into like some of the bigger rivers, let's say the river that I guide on most, the South Fork of the Snake, is that's basically a giant tailwater. So you're gonna have you are gonna have stones and stuff in the river, but you're gonna have varied bottoms of kind of material. You can have sand, you can have silt, you can have all these different things in the river. And so, and then you have spring creeks. Like Silver Creek is a spring creek, so the water is basically coming from the ground, which is kind of a strange thing. Like sometimes people will talk about, well, if I go in the fall, will there be enough water? It's like, actually, there's more water in the fall because it's coming from the aquifer.
Oh, right.
It comes up.
Wow.
It comes up as the year goes, which is like hard for people to understand.
Spring creeks, tailwaters, and freestones. I mean, those pretty much the three types of kind of fishing rivers, and that are
and a lot of people will say whether it's dammed or not. Basically, but most people refer to the non-dammed as freestones. And they're, most of the rivers out west, a lot of the famous trout rivers have a dam.
Have tailwater. Yeah, all the bit like
They're
Henry's.
tailwater.
And that's because it's such a, and maybe even going to get more critical as we go with some of these climate change, right? Things are going on where summer flows or things are getting hotter. I mean, have you been, I guess we're actually having this week, we've got the Wood River Conservation Group. I think it's the trust will be on talking about some of the issues in the wood. But is that something, I'm assuming that's probably an issue up there too, potentially?
For sure, it can be, especially on freestone rivers and rivers that rely on their flows from the snowmelt. Sure, the warmth of the water is an issue for sure. Even on the tailwaters, the waters are warming up a little bit. So, but you're right. If it's a giant reservoir, the tailwater is more protected.
Yeah, because they can take water out from down at the bottom, and it's cool. Right? They have a lot of control a lot of times on where the water's coming from, whether it's at the bottom, which is nice and cool, versus right.
Yeah, even if it's a top release, it's still more consistent. So yeah, that'll be interesting to hear that. Obviously, I'm not a scientist, so I don't know what the latest stuff is going on.
Yeah. It's going to be exciting. We did this on the Henry's Fork too. It was really awesome. And we did a lot over there because we had a number of episodes, but we had the Henry's Fork, we had two different groups over there that talked about some of the stuff they're doing. And one of the big things they said was water. They said just working with the groups, the farmers, the people with the irrigation, because if you don't work with the people that have the water rights, right, it's going to be a struggle. So I think, like anything, building partnerships is a big part of it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's always been, Bureau of Reclamation and the farmers and, the fly fishing tourism industry is huge now. So everybody does have to work together in a lot of these places for that. So yeah, those are that's something that affects me daily, but the politics get pretty thick, so it's hard to navigate sometimes and know.
I know.
What's going on. So that's why it's nice. That's why it's nice if you have people on that kind of know what they're talking about with those issues.
Yeah. This is kind of just a random fun. I'm interested in myself, but you're in Boise, right? You're in Boise physically, right?
Yeah, right now. Yep.
Yeah, you're in Boise. So Boise versus, say, Sun River versus the Idaho Falls and all that area. As far as you mentioned politics, but not even talking about politics, but just the area. Is there a lot of similarities, or are there a lot of differences, say, between Boise and if you head over to the east side?
Oh, you mean Sun Valley, not Sun River.
Or Sun, yeah, what did I say? Sun River. Yeah, Sun River.
Yeah,
Sun River's similar.
Sun River's in Oregon.
That's right. Sun
yeah,
Valley, yeah.
No, it's a little bit different. It's higher up, the elevation's different. And so are the rivers different? Yeah. I mean, the Boise River in town here is very crowded now. The last like 5-10 years, it's a tailwater that's a dam right above town. But there are parts of it when you're on it that kind of remind you of being over in Idaho Falls or Sun Valley area, because it still has cottonwoods and it's still coming through the valley. But it's an urban river now, is what we call it. So, and a lot of people, love fishing, so they're out there, and a lot of fly anglers, a lot of spin casters. But no, I mean, there are times when you're out on the Boise River and there's no one around that you kind of feel like you could be on any of the western rivers. But we also have the South Fork of the Boise that's it has a lot of angler pressure, but it's beautiful and there's no buildings or anything. Okay. And then you have the Oahe River just across the Oregon border. Yeah, and that's kind of a different type of river. It's a tailwater again, but it's got a lot of unique kind of features. The water color and all that type of stuff.
Quick break for a word from our sponsor. With more than 40 years of experience in coffee, the Anglers Coffee Team roasts a full range of coffee with one goal in mind: delivering excellent coffee to every single angler. Responsibly sourced from farms using sustainable growing practices, you can rest easy knowing you are doing your part. Roasted and shipped within 48 hours to assure freshness. For me, it's all about that freshness and taste. When I crack open a bag of Anglers in the morning, I feel good because I know not only does it taste great, but I am supporting great movements along the way. With a blend for every taste, a dry dropper on the go tea bag option, and a roast sampler, Joe at Anglers is serving your needs. It's time to step up to better coffee and more impact for the fish species and causes we love. You can head over to wetflyswing.com/anglers right now to grab a bag of greatness today. That's Anglers, ANGLERS, to make a change today. Smitty's Fly Box, delivering monthly flies, fly materials, and accessories each month with their Smitty subscription fly box. If you need a unique fly selection for a new water you're fishing, or if you want to get started fly tying the easy way, Smitty's has you covered. They will find out where you're fishing and supply you with a custom fly assortment. And Smitty's has been producing high-quality flies and materials for over 30 years, and you may not realize it, but Smitty's is connected to Round Rocks, who is the sole supporter to Sportsman's Warehouse and has tied and supplied millions of flies over the years. I was at Sportsman's this week and picked up a couple of dozen flies, some chubby, small and large dry flies, some terrestrial patterns. The quality was exceptional. That's one of my struggles, is the dry flies. So I love looking at these little guys, from small little tiny flies that I can barely see with my eyesight to the big ones. And these are the same people who are delivering and tying these flies to your door with Smitty's Fly Box. It's a great time right now to get stocked up for the season. You can head over to smittysflybox.com right now to take a look at their selection of flies and monthly boxes right now. Let Smitty's take the guesswork out of choosing fly materials and patterns right now. This is also an easy way to support this podcast and a small business who has been producing high-quality flies for many years. Check them out right now. That's Smitty's, SMITTYS, smittysflybox.com. Okay, back to the show. How's the Oahe compared to, say, the Wood River, like size-wise and just the way it fishes? Totally different?
Well, as far as, they're completely different looking rivers. The flows are different on the Oahe, and the Oahe's always had this famous kind of green color to it. Doesn't matter what time of year, and it's, sometimes it's a combination of algae, but it's more coming from I think it's the lime that's in the coming from basically the feeder
geology
rivers. Well, because right. the reservoir has the same color in it, so whatever's feeding it makes it discuss. So when you get there and you've never been there, you're like, oh no, the river's like off. Something's wrong. It's like it's kind of a cool thing because the fish can see. They can see through it. You might not be able to see your foot, below your knee, but the fish can see. And it's slower moving. There's more silt, and mud, and there's some rocks. It's a little more rocky up toward the top where the dam release is. And then the wood, like I said, has got this kind of mountain pristine feel to it. Like it's you just feel like you're at a higher elevation in a Rocky Mountain freestone. Parts of it, they're about the same width. and it depends, I guess it depends on the type of year for the CFS, how fast they're flowing. So, but usually the Oahe doesn't flow very fast. And
No.
the Wood River is just all based on what the snow melt is. So it can roar.
Yeah. Well, right. Well, let's talk about that on the wood. So if we're doing this clinic, when would be the time you would think would be the good time to go over there and do this?
Fall's really fun as far as access. If you try to do some Euro Nymphing in the spring, sometimes you just can't access things because you just don't know how warm it's going to be. And the water can come up. That's one of the things about a free flowing river that doesn't have a dam on it. You just kind of have to pay attention to Mother Nature. So a lot of times in the fall, the weather's beautiful.
So the same time like we did on the Henry's Fork, kind of the early October?
Yeah, maybe, because the also maybe not as many tourists or fly anglers. And so it's easier to find spots and not intrude on other anglers. And then like the weather's beautiful again.
Yeah.
A lot of times it'll be 75 and sunny.
Right.
During that time. And that's my favorite time to fish the wood is in the fall. So
that's awesome. Okay.
Like parts of spring when there's certain hatches and stuff, that parts of spring are great, but you just never really know how high it's going to be.
Yeah, we need the confidence to know. Okay, and let's touch back on the leaders real quick because I want to touch on a couple other ones. You mentioned the one that you used up in Canada. So you mentioned so that's kind of the micro. You have the intermediate and beginner. So talk about how maybe describe an intermediate rig. What would that leader look like?
An intermediate, like I could just use the ones that I like to build, but I have one that I call kind of a hybrid, easy. It's an easy build, and I would call it an intermediate. It's basically, you can buy like kind of a 7 to 8 foot store-bought knotless taper leader, maybe down to 2X or 3X, then just tie it off to, 2.5 to 3 feet of bicolor, Umpqua is great, but you can pick whatever bicolor indicator material you want. And then a tippet ring after that. And most of, the smaller the better on tippet rings. I usually go 2 millimeter, but we'll talk about all that stuff too, which is great. It might be intimidating, but it's not really once you just jot it down.
Right.
And tippet rings, if you're not familiar with them and you want to do this clinic, you will be familiar with them and you'll probably love them.
Yeah.
One thing I noticed several years ago in Europe was a lot of the anglers are using tippet rings on dry fly rigs. And I was like, oh, that's awesome. Is it going to sink? Like, no, the tippet ring's so small that it actually is buoyant. It actually helps the leader float up there.
Right. And the tippet ring, what's the main reason for a tippet ring versus using a knot?
Well, obviously you're not going to use as much tippet material. It's quicker and it's just a lot more convenient. So it enables you to re-rig faster and re-rig. And it's convenient in so many different ways.
What's the knot? What's the knot used to tie your tippet onto your tippet ring?
Either a barrel knot or a surgeon's knot. Depends. If I have time to build barrel knots, I will, but I use surgeon's knots when I'm out, competing on the river or guiding. So, and they both work great. So, and then, I'll use a kind of a figure 8, or if you want to call it a Davy knot, to go to the tippet ring. But you can, with knots, you can kind of do your own thing. A lot of, if you're really confident in your clinch knot, you can use it for a lot of your connections. It's totally fine. A lot of people do. But then after that tippet ring, then it's the same exact thing with, 1.5 times the depth of the water. So basically all you're doing is tying, let's see, 1 knot to the tippet ring and then your leader. And the fact that the store-bought knotless tapered leader, it doesn't have knots in it, that's nice because you're not, because you're trying to learn how to not tangle with these. This leader is more like 15 to 16 feet.
Oh, it's shorter. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I use it a lot when I'm just out having fun fishing because it's, I can attach it to a traditional weight forward fly line or double taper. It's easy to turn into a dry dropper rig and turns over nicely. So it's a nice all around. And, once again, I have diagrams for all this stuff that people in the, come to the school or buy the course can see all that stuff.
Yeah, that's what I think we're going to do. I think another shout out to that. So the webinar we're doing, we're going to have some little cheat sheets, right? And so that'll be some. And actually, people were asking about that already. Like, hey, where do we get the cheat sheet? So I think when we do these webinars, we will have a cheat sheet, and then, like we said, it's going to be a full course that everybody will get if they join the clinic this year. And so a good shout out to that. So on this hybrid, really, I'm looking at it. I mean, the big difference is the length. So you're talking, it's more like 15 feet versus say 22 feet. Is that because you could have the same tippet, right? You could still have a 7 or 8x tippet on there. Is that the biggest difference between the hybrid?
Yeah, but usually, like I said, this easy hybrid, I get a lot of people who are kind of have already done a little bit of European nymphing, and they just want something easy that turns over nicely. The leader can actually turn over and carry the flies. So a lot of times, we're talking 4 to 5x on that bottom part.
Oh, I see. So that is the difference. It's even the bottom's thicker too.
It's a heavier leader, but it works great. It's sometimes you want a heavy leader for the larger fish. And now if you want to, even let's say it's your very first day out there and you just like really worried that you're not going to be able to turn those flies over because your lob cast and your Euro nymphing casting is just not, you're just starting. You can even go to a leader that Brett Bishop kind of designed for his anglers, for his clients that want to learn how to Euro nymph. It's similar to, some of the leaders from the past. I know George, Daniel, a lot of the guys, we all started with these leaders where we had maxima, like 10, 12 feet of it. Brett will go like 12 to 14 feet of, pretty heavy, like 3X mono. Like I think he likes to use the white Cortland stuff so that he doesn't have to add knots to it, and he'll go straight to the tipper ring with that. Yeah, and then he'll just do wax or a fabric pen and a marker. So the less knots you have on that, the better, because they don't you don't get tangled up with your flies if you happen to kind of throw a little bit of an overloop or something in it, and then you're just from the tippet ring, same thing. 1.5 times the depth of the water. I mean, talk about simple. That one is usually, it's anywhere from, 14 to, you can go up to 20 feet depending on how long. You can also take that 12 to 14 feet down. So you could make this thing a 15-foot leader that turns over very nicely. And like I said, 20 years ago, we were using maxima, heavy maxima, and we had leaders that were turning over like this. So that was that, and everything's evolved.
And that's Brett's, and I think Brett likely will be maybe the other person helping with the clinic this year if it all works out. Which would be nice. Yeah, that would be nice. What's that called? What would be Brett's that you just described there? Would that be more of a like intermediate, or is that more of like what type of leader is that? If you had to categorize, I would
call it like a beginning.
That is a beginning,
heavy,
right?
Heaviest, yeah. So heavy, medium weight, and then micros are super lightweight.
Okay. So when we say beginner, we're saying basically that one Brett would be a good example of somebody if they wanted to start with a Euro. That's a beginner leader.
I like it, yeah. And oftentimes with a leader similar to that, Brett and I have taken out people before, and we'll use Tenkara, so they don't have any reel to deal with either. They're just throwing that and walking around, and catching fish. So that Tenkara is a really nice way to introduce European nymphing to someone who's never, held a European nymphing rod.
Oh, right.
Because they just don't have to deal with line management. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say that one. And then, and you know what, you can, like, I know a lot of people that they really liked this style leader, even though I'm calling it a beginner leader, they liked it and they've been fishing with it for 15 years, European nymphing with it, and love it. And that's it. It's like, and they're highly effective. They could compete with it. So it's all kind of based on how it feels to you, how heavy it flies, what type of river, that type of stuff. So yeah, they're all interchangeable. I've been in Spain before with, and seen my buddy Pablo, who's an amazing angler over there. And he's gone, 6.5 straight, 22 feet of 6.5, clear floral, and what he basically is doing is he's shooting the weight of the bead head, and that's a highly skilled situation where that thing could go all over the place if you're not used to it, but obviously he can throw it into a paper cup on the other side. So it's like, that would be, obviously your accuracy, everything goes out the window when you start getting into situations like that. And he might not even use any type of indicator in that situation, but he does use wax and pens. I know that. So you can just take that off with your fingernails.
Oh, okay. Yeah, the wax and pens.
Yeah, so it gives you a lot of options. But basically how that whole progression works is it's heavier, it's easier, and it tapers down more. And then as there's like, maybe if it's level, really thin, level, long, light, that becomes harder to be accurate. So
right, that's it.
But your presentation, if you're in really spooky wild fish situation in Spain, you might not be able to catch a fish with big, heavier leaders.
Yeah. So that's really what the Euro leader setup is, that you have this heavier butt section, and then it just goes to kind of a tippet ring down to the really light tippet. That's like, if you compare it to, say, what a normal trout leader would be like, that's the big difference.
Yeah. And also like it does mimic, trout situations where if you're on the South Fork of the Snake and you can fish 4X and, a tapered leader. But then you move to Flat Creek outside of Jackson Hole or Silver Creek or the ranch, you've got to go down to 6X, 6.5, 7X. So it kind of follows the same exact, system. And you can see this is much different than, just spin fishing where you've got a thick line and you don't think about any of this stuff. You just zip your lure out
exactly.
there.
Yeah, good. Okay. Well, let's start to take it out of here with our Fly Shop shout out today. And today's is presented by, maybe you could talk about, because I think the Silver Creek Outfitters, I think Terry and the crew out there, maybe talk about that shop a little bit. Where are they at, and what do they do there?
They're in Ketchum. It's an amazing store. One of the nicest fly shops you'll ever see. It's got, they've got a giant hunting section. The apparel's amazing. Yeah, it's one of those stores that I just get stuck in. I can not get out of there. There's so many cool things. The guide crew there is been around for a long time. They're amazing, highly skilled, but more than anything, just really easy to get along with, and patient, and just very professional is what I would call Silver Creek Outfitters. It's just one of the things that Terry does, that he makes sure that everything is very professional and first class. And like I said, they're located right there in Ketchum and right in the middle of, not very far from the Wood River. So location's amazing. And then if you're in Ketchum, or even if you decide to stay in Bellevue or Haley or Sun Valley, you're still really close driving, to get to the shop and get your stuff and meet and everything. So I don't know. It's just like, it's just an amazing outfit. I've been lucky enough to, a lot of my bookend days, like in the spring and the fall, I'll guide through those guys. A lot of times I guide in the summer because most of my clients are from the Jackson area and Teton Valley.
Oh yeah.
But for many, many, many years, I've been guiding on the, when I come back, I'll have clients that come through that are from the Sun Valley area. And also occasionally in the winter too. It's a nice option to guide out of Sun Valley area. So like I said, just look up Silver Creek Outfitters online or Instagram, and you'll be able to learn a lot about what a great operation they are.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes to them, and then and so basically, Ketchum, Sun Valley, it's all right there. And then Boise's, it's almost equal distance Ketchum to Boise as Ketchum to Idaho Falls. Is that a similar amount of drive? What is that? A couple hours, something like that?
Yeah, it's not very far from Idaho Falls.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, good. So that's our Fly Shop shout out, and we broke down the leaders, which I want to do a little bit here on the leaders, so people have that. Give us one more tip. We're going to leave it away with a tip on casting. You mentioned the lob cast. Can you describe how you would use in Euro Nymphing, use a lob cast, what that is?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a catch-all phrase for European nymphing cast. But so I would say that there are subtleties that are different that people could call it. But I would say the biggest thing that I noticed that people have breakthroughs is they take more time at the backside of the cast and feel the leader and feel the flies. before they come forward with it. And that helps. That's one of the biggest things for accuracy.
Oh, okay.
You know, if you are still kind of bringing your traditional, you know, cast into it without that nice pause for just a second to feel the European nymphing rod, you know, the longer rod load, your accuracy will be off. So really kind of like love that pause in the back and kind of learn it. Yeah. And figure it out. You don't have to have a pause as you get better. But I think there's a little micro pause in almost all of our casts so that we can, so that we can get that. That's for accuracy. That's one of the tips that I often give.
Okay. Perfect. And this is the other cool thing with the clinic is that it's going to be awesome because being on the water, we can really break down the cast and talk to people about that. Right. That's something that I think is hard to do on a podcast to describe it. But is that something we're going to cover in detail on this clinic?
Yeah. It's nice to have, you know, if Brett is able to do this and walks over and he'll be like, okay, here, try to hold your rod at this angle here. Or if you want to use your finger, you know, your pointer finger, for casting or for the angling part, try that. Maybe that'll help you. You know, there's all these different things that we can kind of try to do. Just going through all these, you know, levels ourselves. You know, you can kind of relate to where people might be.
Nice. All right, good. And if people are coming in, so if they do get into this clinic, where would be recommend like on staying? Is there tons of places, I'm assuming, up near off of the wood that they could stay and catch them or any tips on that?
Yeah, you just look all the way from Bellevue, Haley, Ketchum, Sun Valley. Sun Valley Resort's really kind of cool. It's a classic deal. All the pictures of Marilyn Monroe and Clint Eastwood.
Oh, really?
It's really fun. And you're still in the valley. And one of the nice things, you can fly into Twin Falls or Boise and drive up. So the accessibility is really easy. I think it's about an hour and 50 minutes to Silver Creek from Boise, and then another half an hour up, 40 minutes up to all the way up to maybe Sun Valley or Ketchum. So, yeah. So, and like you could, if you wanted to drive both days and have more options, you could. Twin Falls is not really that far away. You can head up.
Yeah, Twin Falls.
Yeah,
right. Yeah, you're right there.
Yeah, so it's a very accessible area, and you can fly right into Sun Valley. And be there and rent a car too. And that's really easy. Not necessarily really cheap, but really easy.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's really easy. Yeah. The more we do these Idaho, I feel like Idaho is it's right in, we've talked about this before, but it's kind of in the middle of the western states. And it feels like Montana, some of these other places maybe in the past have gotten a lot of airplay. But yeah, the more you dig into Idaho, you realize, wow, like we talked about today, you've got the Sun Valley, of course, all the Teton area, plus Boise. I mean, and then we haven't even talked about the northern part of the state, right? Which is, I'm sure there's some waters up there, which would be decent to
there's a lot of great fishing up there. Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. You have St. John's River. Yeah.
Oh yeah. St. John's. Exactly. I think we will leave it there today. And again, give a big highlight to the giveaway. Let's just, wetflyswing.com/giveaway. There will also be a link in the show notes. People can enter to win this big clinic. And then if people want to actually get involved and just get a spot for this, they can reach out to me. We'll have a link there as well. But yeah, Peter, you feeling good about this one? You want to leave it here until our next event?
Yeah, sounds great.
All right, Pete. Thanks again. We'll be in touch, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, Dave. Thanks for having me again.
That is a wrap. You can grab all of the show notes at wetflyswing.com. And please follow us on Instagram and share this episode out with someone you love. Please send me an email, dave@wetflyswing.com, if you have any feedback or want us to put together an episode on this podcast for you. Check in anytime. I hope you enjoyed this podcast and would love to meet up with you on the water. We have new fly fishing schools going all year long and all around the country. So if you want to connect, let's do it right now. All right, time to get out of here. I hope you have a great evening. I hope you have a great morning or great afternoon wherever in the world you are. And I appreciate you for stopping by and checking out the show today. We'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Wet Fly Swing Fly Fishing Show. For notes and links from this episode, visit wetflyswing.com.